The fluorescent lights of St. Hope Hospital buzzed like distant thunder, casting a sterile glow over the lobby at midnight. Rain hammered the windows, turning the world outside into a blurred watercolor of shadows and streetlights. In the corner, huddled on a plastic chair meant for waiting families, sat a girl no older than 16. Her clothes were soaked through, clinging to her thin frame like a second skin, and her eyes, wide haunted, darted toward every footstep echoing on the linoleum floor. Bruises bloomed faintly on her arms, hidden mostly by the sleeves of an oversized jacket, but the way she flinched at the approach of a security guard told the story no words could. She was alone, utterly, in a place built for healing, but offering none to those without papers or a story that fit the system. Nurse Elena Vasquez paused at the reception desk, her shift ending in 20 minutes, but something in the girl's posture pulled her like a riptide. Elena was 38, her dark hair pulled into a practical bun, her scrub still crisp despite 12 hours of stitching wounds and whispering comforts to the dying. She'd seen too many lost souls in her years here, veterans with ghosts in their eyes, mothers clutching babies against the cold. But this girl carried a silence that screamed. Elena's hand tightened on her coffee mug, steam curling up like unspoken regrets. 10 years ago, in the dim wards of a border clinic, she'd made a promise to a dying friend: protect the forgotten, the ones the world chewed up and spat out. That vow had carried her through divorces, through nights when the job felt like drowning. But tonight, it ignited. The security guard lumbered closer, his boots scuffing the floor, radio crackling with impatience. "Hey kid, you can't stay here. Hospital policy. No loitering." His voice was gruff, not cruel, but edged with the exhaustion of enforcing rules that bent for no one. The girl shrank back, her lips parting in a silent plea, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. Elena moved before she could think, stepping between them like a shield. She's not loitering. She's scared, and it's pouring out there. Let her dry off at least. The guard eyed her, recognition flickering. He knew Elena, the one who bent rules for the strays. "Vasquez, you know the drill. Administration's cracking down. One more incident, and it's your neck." Elena didn't back down. She knelt beside the girl, her voice soft as the rustle of starched fabric. "What's your name, Misha?" The girl whispered. "Lila," her voice barely threading the air. In that moment, Elena saw her own reflection, not the nurse, but the girl she'd been, orphaned young in a city that devoured the weak. "You're safe here, Lila, I promise." The word hung heavy, echoing that old vow, a thread pulling taut across years. The guards sighed, radioing for backup, but Elena stood firm, guiding Lila to a side bench away from prying eyes. She fetched a blanket from the supply closet, the wool rough and warm, draping it over the girl's shoulders. "Tell me what happened," Elena murmured, her hands steady as she checked for hidden injuries, finding only the faint marks of a struggle long past. Word spread fast in the underbelly of the night shift. By the time Elena's relief arrived, whispers had reached the charge nurse, a woman with a clipboard and a ledger colder than the rain. "Vasquez, my office now." The meeting was brief, brutal. "You interfered with security. That girl, homeless, no ID, possible vagrant. We have protocols for a reason. You're suspended pending review. Clean out your locker." Elena's heart pounded, but she met the woman's gaze. "Protocols? She's a child, not a threat. What if it was your daughter?" The charge nurse's lips thinned. "My daughter wouldn't be sleeping in a lobby. Pack up." Elena nodded once, the weight of dismissal settling like lead. She found Lila still there, blanket clutched tight, eyes wide with fresh fear. "They'll send me back out," Lila said, voice trembling. Elena knelt again, the lobby emptying around them like a stage after the final act. "Not tonight, come on. We'll figure this out." Outside, the rain had eased to a drizzle, the parking lot a sea of puddles reflecting neon signs from the diner across the street. Elena's old pickup truck coughed to life, its engine a familiar growl that drowned the knot in her throat. She drove in silence, the wipers slapping rhythm like a heartbeat, until they reached her small apartment on the edge of town. A place of faded photos and half-packed boxes, remnants of a life she'd pieced together after losing her brother to the streets years ago. That loss had forged her promise, the one she'd whispered over his bedside: honor the broken, build a family from the fragments. Lila sat on the worn couch, blanket around her as Elena brewed tea, the steam carrying hints of chamomile and safety. As dawn crept in, painting the blinds with gold, Elena's phone buzzed, a text from an old contact, a nurse from her early days who'd heard the news. Fired for doing right? That's not the end. Call me. Elena stared at the screen, then at Lila, who slept fitfully, her face softened in repose. The girl's story unraveled in fragments through the night. Runaways, shadows chasing her from the city underbelly, a plea for help that no one had answered until now. Elena felt the pull, that ancient vow tightening like a chain. Losing her job was a door slamming, but it cracked open something deeper, a call to arms, quiet and unyielding. By morning, the hospital lobby felt like a distant memory, but the ripples spread. Whispers in the break room turned to murmurs of support, then to plans. Elena didn't know it yet, but her stand had lit a spark. Across town, in the shadowed alleys where women gathered strength from shared scars, ex-soldiers, survivors, sisters in ink and leather, a message circulated, one of their own needed backing. The female crew, bound by oaths older than blood, revered their engines in the grey light. Loyalty wasn't given, it was forged in fire, and Elena's promise had just summoned the storm. The morning sun filtered through the threadbare curtains of Elena's apartment, casting long shadows across the cluttered kitchen table where Lila sat, picking at a bowl of oatmeal. The steam rose in lazy spirals, mingling with the faint scent of rain-soaked earth, still clinging to their clothes from the night before. Elena leaned against the counter, her phone in hand, the text from her old colleague glowing like a beacon in the dim light. Meet at the old warehouse on Elm, 8 p.m. Sisters are coming. She glanced at Lila, the girl's dark hair falling in tangled waves over her face, hiding eyes that still held the echo of whatever chased her into that hospital lobby. Elena's suspension, no, her firing, hung in the air like unspoken smoke, but in its place stirred something fiercer, a resolve born from years of quiet battles. Lila looked up, spoon paused mid-air, her voice a fragile thread. You didn't have to do this. Take me in like I'm family or something. Elena set the phone down, crossing the room with the soft pad of her slippers on the linoleum. She pulled out a chair, the wood creaking under her weight, and met Lila's gaze. Family isn't always blood, Miha. Sometimes it's the ones you choose when the world turns its back. The words carried the weight of her brother's memory, his final rasp in that sterile room, promising her strength if she'd only fight for the overlooked. She'd buried that grief deep, letting it fuel her shifts at St. Hope. But last night, shielding Lila had unearthed it all, raw, insistent, demanding action. Outside, the neighborhood hummed to life, distant car horns, the sizzle of bacon from a nearby window, children shouting in the alley. Elena stood, rinsing the bowls with methodical splashes, her mind racing ahead. The hospital had been her anchor, a place where she mended more than bodies, but now it felt like a cage she'd escaped. She dried her hands on a faded towel, the fabric rough against her skin, and turned to Lila. We can't stay cooped up here. Let's get you some dry clothes, something that fits. They stepped into the bustling street, the air crisp with the promise of a new day. though Eleanor's steps carried the tension of eyes watching from shadowed doorways. Lila clung to her side, the oversized jacket swallowing her frame, but there was a spark in her posture now, a tentative trust blooming like a desert flower after rain. The thrift store on the corner was a labyrinth of racks and forgotten stories, the bell above the door jingling like a cautious welcome. Eleanor rifled through hangers, pulling out jeans and a hoodie in soft grey, holding them up to Lila's slim build. "Try these. They'll keep you warm without screaming 'run away.'" As Lila disappeared into the changing stall, the curtain whispering shut, Elena's phone vibrated again. Another message, this one from an unknown number. "Heard about the lobby. We're riding for you. Be ready." Her pulse quickened, a low thrum like the rev of engines in the distance. She knew of the sisters, the Iron Vixens, they called themselves in hushed tones, a crew of women who'd traded combat boots for leather vests, forging bonds in the fires of their own losses. Veterans, mechanics, survivors like her, united by oaths whispered over late-night fires. Elena had crossed paths with them once, years back, when they'd pulled her from a roadside breakdown, no questions asked. Lila emerged, the new clothes transforming her from a ghost to a girl with quiet fire in her eyes. "Feels normal," she said, twisting the hem of the hoodie. Elena paid with crumpled bills, the cashier's nod a silent approval, and they stepped back into the sun. But as they walked, a shadow stretched long across the pavement, a black SUV idling at the curb, tinted windows reflecting the world like a distorted mirror. Elena's hand found Lila's arm, guiding her faster, the air thickening with unspoken threat. "Keep moving," she murmured, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. The vehicle peeled away slowly, tail lights fading into traffic, but the message lingered. Whoever had marked Lila wasn't done. Back home, Eleanor locked the door with a decisive click, the bolt sliding home like a vow sealed. She brewed coffee, the rich aroma filling the space, grounding them both as Lila finally opened up. Fragments spilled out. A foster home turned nightmare, hands that gripped too tight, a midnight escape into the rain-slicked streets. "They said I'd never make it alone," Lila whispered, her fingers tracing invisible scars on the table. Elena listened, her own past mirroring the pain, the brother lost to the system's indifference, the promise she'd made to never let another fall through the cracks. "You won't be alone," she replied, her tone ironclad. Not anymore. As afternoon bled into evening, the apartment grew still, save for the tick of a wall clock marking time like heartbeats. Elena paced, the floorboards groaning underfoot, her mind weaving plans from threads of memory. The vixen's message echoed her old oath, pulling her toward the warehouse where loyalty waited like a gathering storm. Lila watched from the couch, blanket draped over her knees, a mix of fear and hope etching her young face. "What if they come for me here?" she asked, voice small against the growing dusk. Elena stopped, kneeling to her level, the scent of coffee lingering between them. "Then we face them, together." The words hung, heavy with the weight of chosen kin, as the first distant rumble pierced the quiet, engines, low and purposeful, rolling through the twilight streets. The sisters were coming, their arrival a thunderclap in the making, drawn by Elena's stand. In the undercurrents of the city, whispers turned to roars. A nurse's promise had awakened the pack, and justice, long deferred, revved to life. By nightfall, the warehouse loomed on Elm's forgotten edge, its corrugated walls scarred by time and graffiti, floodlights cutting harsh angles through the gathering dark. Eleanor parked her truck in the gravel lot, Lila at her side, the girl's hand trembling in hers. Harleys and choppers lined the perimeter, chrome glinting like drawn blades under the moon. Women in vests emblazoned with a snarling fox gathered around a bonfire, flames dancing shadows across faces etched with stories of their own. tattoos of fallen comrades, scars from battles unseen. The leader, a tall figure named Riley with silver-streaked hair and eyes like polished steel, stepped forward, her boots crunching gravel. "Vasquez, we heard. You protected one of the lost. That's our code, too." Elena nodded, the fire's warmth chasing the chill from her bones. Introductions blurred into a circle of nods and grips, each woman a pillar in the fragile architecture of trust. Lila stood close, absorbing the strength radiating from these strangers-turned allies. Riley's voice cut through the crackle of wood. "The hospital's just the start. Word is, the ones after her are tied to bigger shadows, corrupt hands pulling strings in the system that fired you." Elena felt the pull, her promise expanding like ripples on water, binding them all. As the meeting unfolded, plans sketched in the firelight, the night air hummed with purpose. Loyalty wasn't a whisper here, it was the growl of engines ready to ride, a family forged in the face of the storm. The embers glowed as the group dispersed, assignments murmured like sacred rites. Elena drove home with Lila, the road unspooling under headlights, a fragile peace settling. But in the rear view, distant taillights flickered. Pursuers or protectors, the line blurred in the dark. Her stand had summoned the vixens, but it had also stirred the shadows, setting the stage for a reckoning where promises would clash like thunder. The headlights of Elena's truck sliced through the inky night, carving paths on the rain-slicked asphalt that wound back toward her apartment. Lila sat shotgun, her new hoodie zipped tight against the chill seeping through the vents, her fingers twisting the seatbelt like a lifeline. The engine's steady hum filled the silence, punctuated by the occasional splash of tires through shallow puddles left from the earlier storm. Elena's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror every few seconds, those distant taillights weaving in and out of view like ghosts reluctant to fade. Were they the vixens ensuring safe passage, or the shadows Lila had fled closing in? The uncertainty gnawed at her, a quiet tension coiling in her gut, but she kept her voice even, an anchor for the girl beside her. "You holding up?" Elena asked, her gaze softening as she glanced over. Lila nodded, but her eyes betrayed the storm within, wide and watchful, scanning the dark beyond the windows. That fire, those women, they looked like they could take on the world. "You." A faint smile tugged at her lips, the first real one since the hospital lobby. Elena felt a warmth bloom in her chest, echoing the bonfire's glow. The vixens weren't just a crew. They were a testament to promises kept, women who'd stared down their own demons and emerged with fists clenched and hearts open. Riley's words lingered. "That's our code too." It mirrored Elena's vow, the one whispered over her brother's fading breath, now stretching to envelop Lila like an invisible shield. They pulled into the apartment lot, the gravel crunching under tires, the building's faded brick facade looming like a weary sentinel under the street lamp's orange haze. Elena killed the engine, the sudden quiet amplifying the distant rumble of thunder rolling in from the horizon. She scanned the shadows, no movement, no flickering lights, but caution urged her hand to the door handle slowly. "Stay close," she murmured, stepping out into the cool air that carried the metallic tang of impending rain. Lila followed, her sneakers soft on the ground, the two of them moving as one toward the entrance. The lock clicked open with a familiar rasp, and they slipped inside, the door sealing behind them like a barrier against the encroaching night. In the kitchen, Elena flicked on the light, the bulb humming to life and bathing the space in a warm yellow glow. She busied herself with the kettle, the water's rush into the pot a soothing ritual, steam soon curling up with the scent of chamomile tea bags unfurling. Lila sank onto the couch, pulling her knees up, the blanket from the hospital draped over her like a talisman. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice threading the quiet. Eleanor poured the tea, handing over a mug that warmed Lila's palms. the ceramic's heat seeping through like quiet reassurance. "We wait for dawn. Riley's got eyes out there. They'll handle the watch tonight." But even as she spoke, doubt flickered. The hospital's protocols were rigid, but the forces after Lila hinted at something deeper, corruption woven into the city's underbelly, where lost girls like her were pawns in games no one admitted playing. The night deepened, the apartment's walls creaking softly under the wind's push, rain beginning to patter against the window like impatient fingers. Elena sat across from Lila, the steam from her own mug rising in lazy wisps, her mind replaying the warehouse meeting, faces around the fire, Jax, a former mechanic with grease-stained hands and a laugh like gravel, Mia, a veteran whose limp spoke of sands far from here, her eyes sharp as she sketched routes on a crumpled map. They'd shared stories in snippets, losses that forged them, oaths sworn in the dead of night to protect their own. Elena's firing had been the spark, but Lila's plight the fuel, igniting a collective resolve. "We've got your back," Riley had said, her grip firm on Elena's shoulder, the leather of her vest creaking like old leather-bound promises. A knock shattered the calm, sharp, insistent, echoing through the thin door. Elena froze, mug halfway to her lips, the tea's warmth forgotten. Lila's eyes widened, her body tensing like a coiled spring. "Who?" Elena set the mug down with a soft clink, rising silently, her bare feet padding across the cool floor. She peered through the peephole, heart thudding a steady rhythm. Outside stood Jax, rain beading on her helmet, her bike parked discreetly in the alley's mouth. Elena opened the door a crack, the damp air rushing in with the scent of wet asphalt. "Trouble," she whispered. Jack shook her head, water dripping from her jacket as she stepped inside, her boots leaving faint prints. "Not yet, but those tail lights? Not ours. Spotted a van circling the block earlier, unmarked, plates dirty. Riley wants you two off-grid till morning. We've got a safe house. Old spot by the river, pack light." Her voice was low, urgent, carrying the weight of shared vigilance. Lila stood, clutching the blanket, her face pale but set. Elena nodded, moving with practiced efficiency, grabbing a duffel from the closet, stuffing in clothes, a first aid kit, the photo of her brother tucked in the side pocket like a silent guardian. The rain intensified, drumming a frantic beat as they slipped out, Jax leading them to her bike, idling in the shadows. The ride was a blur of wind-whipped hair and roaring engine, Elena's truck trailing behind with Mia at the wheel. Lila clung to Jax's back, the leather vest a barrier against the storm, the world streaking past in sheets of water and sodium-lit glows. They veered off the main roads, onto forgotten paths where the city gave way to overgrown lots and the river's murmur. The safe house emerged, a weathered cabin tucked among willows, its windows dark but for a single lantern's flicker. Inside, the air smelled of aged wood and pine, a far cry from the apartment's confines. Riley waited by the hearth, flames crackling low, maps spread on a scarred table. "Welcome to the fold," she said, pulling out chairs with a scrape. The vixens filtered in one by one, engines cutting off like hushed conspiracies, their presence filling the space with a tangible strength. As the group huddled, voices overlapping in the fire's dance, Elena felt the threads of her promise weaving tighter. Lila sat beside her, absorbing the plans, scouts to trace the van, calls to old contacts in the system to unearth the corruption tying the hospital to darker hands. Dilemmas surfaced, cross lines they'd sworn to avoid or let the shadows claim another. Elena's hand found Lila's under the table, a silent vow amid the tension. Outside, the river rushed on, indifferent, but inside, loyalty burned brighter than the fire, a chosen family rising against the tide. Dawn crept in grey and reluctant, mist rising from the water like exhaled breaths. The cabin stirred with purpose, coffee brewing, the rich aroma cutting through the damp, bikes checked with metallic clinks. But as the first light pierced the windows, a radio crackled on the table, Jax's voice tight. "Eyes on the van! They're moving toward the hospital district. Time to ride." Elena stood, the weight of the night settling into resolve, her old oath now amplified by the roar of engines priming outside. The reckoning had begun, promises clashing not in fury, but in the unyielding pursuit of justice, where one nurse's stand rippled into a storm of solidarity. The mist clung to the riverbanks like a shroud as the Vixen's engines growled to life, a symphony of low rumbles echoing off the willows and scattering birds into the pale dawn sky. Elena gripped the handlebars of the borrowed bike Jax had pressed into her hands, the leather worn smooth from years of unyielding rides. Lila rode pillion behind her, arms wrapped tight around Elena's waist, the girl's breath warm against her back despite the chill air whipping past. The safe house faded in the side mirror, its lantern light winking out like a promise sealed. Ahead, Riley led the pack on her sleek black Harley, her silver hair streaming like a banner of defiance, the convoy stretching into a line of chrome and resolve. 8 bikes strong, each woman a thread in the tapestry of loyalty Elena had unwittingly woven. They cut through the outskirts, the road unspooling like a vein, pulsing with the city's hidden life. Puddles from the night's rain mirrored the overcast sky, splashing up in silvery arcs as tires bit the asphalt. Elena's mind raced faster than the wind, fragments of her brother's final words surfacing like ghosts. "Don't let the cracks swallow them, Elena. Promise me." Uday, she'd kept that vow in small ways, bandages on unseen wounds, a kind word in the dead of night. But now it expanded, pulling in these sisters who'd answered her silent call. The hospital's betrayal stung, its protocols a veil for indifference. But the van's pursuit hinted at rot deeper than bureaucracy, hands that preyed on the vulnerable, twisting systems meant to protect into chains. Riley signaled a turn, veering onto a service road, flanking the industrial sprawl, where St. Hope loomed on the horizon. The group slowed, engines throttling down to a murmur, the air thick with the scent of diesel and damp earth. They parked in the shadow of an abandoned silo, its rusted flanks whispering of forgotten labors. Jax dismounted first, her boots thudding soft on the gravel, pulling a pair of binoculars from her vest. "Van's parked 2 blocks out from the hospital entrance," she reported, her voice a low drawl edged with steel. "2 guys inside looking antsy. No plates we can make out, but they've got that unmarked vibe. Cops, or worse." Elena helped Lila off the bike, the girl's legs shaky but her chin lifted, eyes scanning the group with a mix of awe and resolve. Mia, leaning against her chopper with arms crossed, nodded toward the horizon where the hospital's lights flickered like distant stars. "We've got contacts inside, night shift folks who owe Riley a favor. They'll slip us eyes on the lobby cams." The words hung. A bridge between Elena's old world and this new one, where oaths weren't signed on paper but etched in scars and shared silences. Elena felt the weight of it all, the ethical tightrope. Infiltrate without breaking, expose without destroying. Her firing had been personal, but Lila's shadows threatened to engulf them all, demanding a justice that poetry alone couldn't deliver. The group huddled behind the silo, the metal cool against Elena's palm as she steadied herself. Riley unfolded a hand-drawn map, its edges frayed like old wounds, marking routes with a stubby pencil. We split. Jax and Mia scout the van, get tags and faces. Elena, you and Lila hang with me. We hit the back alleys, link with the insider. No heroics. We're ghosts till we know the play. Murmurs of agreement rippled through, fists bumping in quiet solidarity, the fire from the cabin still burning in their eyes. Lila squeezed Elena's hand, her voice a whisper lost in the wind. It's because of me. I don't want anyone hurt." Elena knelt, the gravel biting her knees, meeting the girl's gaze. "No one's getting hurt if we do this right. We're family now, Mika. Families protect their own. As the scouts peeled off, engines fading into the morning haze, Elena mounted up again with Riley and Lila. The three bikes threading through narrow lanes where chain-link fences sagged like weary guards. The city awoke around them, delivery trucks rumbling, early workers shuffling under umbrellas, but the vixens moved unseen, shadows among the grey. Elena's heart pounded a rhythm matching the engine's pulse, memories flashing, her brother's hand going limp, the sterile beep flatlining into silence. A vow born in that void. Protecting Lila wasn't just duty, it was redemption, a chance to mend what the world had torn. They ditched the bikes in an overgrown lot behind the hospital's service entrance, the air heavy with the tang of overflowing dumpsters and faint antiseptic bleed from open doors. Riley led them to a side gate, her knock a coded rap that drew a figure from the shadows, a wiry orderly named Tomas, his face lined with the fatigue of double shifts. "Vasquez," he said, voice hushed, pulling them into a dim corridor lined with humming vending machines. "Heard you got the boot. That girl's story. It's bigger than you know. Social services flagged her weeks ago, but someone upstairs buried it. Ties to a foster ring. Bad apples pulling kids into the dark." Lila's grip tightened on Elena's arm, the corridor's fluorescent buzz amplifying her shallow breaths. Thomas glanced at a security monitor flickering nearby, grainy images showing the lobby empty, save for a lone cleaner mopping under the lights. "Van's boys are waiting for a handoff. Word is, they're from the group that marked her. Enforcers for the corrupt. You stir this, it blows up." Riley's eyes narrowed, her stance unyielding. "Then we blow it clean. Get us footage, Thomas. Proof for the light." He nodded, fingers flying over a keyboard, the screen blooming with timestamps and angles. Elena watched, breath caught, as clips unspooled, the lobby night, her stand against the guard, Lila's huddled form, but deeper cuts revealed shadows, doctored reports, calls from unknown lines quashing inquiries. The pieces clicked, a moral puzzle resolving into outrage. The hospital, her sanctuary, complicit in the shadows chasing Lila. Elena's vow surged, not as quiet comfort but as a clarion call. "We take this to the streets," she said, voice steady amid the tension. "Expose it all, no more hiding." Thomas slipped them a USB drive, small as a promise, his hand lingering. "Be careful, they're watching." They slipped out as sirens wailed distantly, the group reuniting in the lot where Jax waited, face grim. "Van's moving, toward the river, our safe house." Panic flickered, but Riley's command cut through. "Ride hard! We intercept!" Engines roared back to fury, the convoy surging forward, wind tearing at their resolve. Elena felt Lila's arms lock tighter, the road blurring into a test of faith. Dilemmas swirled, confront or evade, truth or safety, but loyalty propelled them, a chosen family hurtling toward confrontation. The van's taillights appeared ahead, a red gleam in the mist, the chase igniting like dawn's first fire. Promises clashed in the roar, justice not in vengeance, but in the unbreaking stand, where one nurse's heart rallied the storm. If you're feeling this story's heartbeat of loyalty and quiet fire, smash that like button below. It fuels these tales of chosen kin and moral thunder. The van's taillights burned like accusatory eyes in the thinning mist, weaving through the industrial backstreets with a predatory grace that set Elena's teeth on edge. Her bike surged forward, the engine's throaty roar merging with the chorus of the vixen's convoy, a wall of sound that drowned the morning's hesitant birdsong. Lila's arms clamped tighter around her midsection, the girl's heartbeat a frantic drum against Elena's back, syncing with the pulse of the road. Wind lashed at them, carrying the sharp bite of exhaust and river mud, as Riley's lead bike pulled alongside the van's flank, her silhouette cutting a fierce line against the grey dawn. The chase wasn't blind fury. It was calculated, a thread of justice pulling taut after years of frayed edges. Eleanor downshifted, gravel spitting from under her tires as they cornered onto a narrower lane flanked by sagging warehouses, their corrugated sides echoing the engine's growl like hollow applause. Memories flickered unbidden, her brother's gaunt face in that final hospital bed, his whisper a fragile anchor. "Keep the light on for them, Elena, the ones no one sees." She dimmed it for too long, patching wounds in sterile rooms while shadows grew unchecked. Now, with Lila's warmth pressing close, that promise roared alive, amplified by the women around her. Jax flanked left on her customized chopper, the wind whipping her short-cropped hair while Mia held the right, her veteran's instincts keeping pace without a waver. They weren't storming gates, they were encircling truth, forcing it into the light. The van swerved abruptly, tires screeching a protest that sliced the air, bumping over a pothole-riddled stretch toward the river's edge. Water glinted ahead, sluggish and brown under the climbing sun, fringed by tangled underbrush that clawed at the sky. Riley signaled with a gloved fist, "Close the gap, but hold fire." No guns, no chaos. Their code demanded precision. A moral scalpel over blunt force. Elena's grip tightened on the handlebars, the leather creaking under her palms, sweat beading despite the chill. "They're heading for the old docks," she shouted over the din, voice carrying to Riley like a relayed vow. The leader nodded, her eyes locked forward, silver strands catching the light like threads of unyielding steel. As the convoy tightened, the van fishtailed, its side mirror shattering against a rusted barrier with a metallic ping that echoed like a warning shot. Two figures inside twisted, faces blurred but tense, men in nondescript jackets, hands gesturing urgently into a radio. Eleanor caught a glimpse of the driver, his jaw set in grim determination, the kind that spoke of orders from higher, dirtier places. Tomas's words replayed in her mind. A fostering, buried files, the hospital's complicity in shuffling lost souls into oblivion. Lila's story wasn't isolated, it was a symptom, a crack in the system's facade where corruption festered like untreated wounds. Elena's firing had been the first tear, but this pursuit threatened to unravel the whole cloth. Jax accelerated. Pulling parallel to the passenger side, her bike's rumble a challenge. She rapped on the window with her knuckles, sharp, insistent, her face a mask of controlled storm. The passenger rolled it down a crack, wind howling through, his voice barking over the noise. "Back off! This ain't your business!" But Jax didn't flinch, her words cutting clean. "It is now. Pull over, or we make it everyone's." The van lurched, brakes locking in a plume of smoke that stung the air with burnt rubber, forcing the vixens to weave aside in a ballet of brakes and throttles. Eleanor eased to a stop behind, heart slamming, as the vehicle skidded to halt on the muddy riverbank, engine ticking like a countdown. The group dismounted in unison, boots sinking into the soft earth. The river's murmur a low underscore to the tension. Riley approached first, hands visible but stance unbowed, her vest's fox emblem catching the light like a badge of ancient honor. Elena stayed back with Lila, shielding the girl behind her, the damp air heavy with the scent of wet soil and impending confrontation. The van doors creaked open, the two men stepping out, broad-shouldered, faces shadowed by hoods, but their eyes darted with the wariness of cornered animals. "You don't know what you're messing with," the driver growled, his hand twitching toward his belt, but Riley's voice sliced through, calm as a surgeon's blade. "We know enough. The girl you want, Lila, she's under our protection, and whatever ring you're running, it ends here." The words hung, laced with the weight of shared scars, the vixens fanning out in a loose semicircle, not aggressive but immovable. Mia's limp didn't slow her as she circled wide, phone in hand, already recording the exchange. The van's plates, the men's faces, Thomas's USB drive burning a hole in Elena's pocket, like proof waiting to ignite. The passenger sneered, but doubt flickered in his posture, the bluster cracking under the collective gaze. You think a bunch of biker broads scare us. We've got pool, social services, the works. Elena stepped forward then, Lila's hand in hers, the girl's fingers cold but steady. Pull that berries, kids. I worked the front lines, saw the files you doctored, the calls you quashed. My job's gone because I wouldn't let her vanish like the others. Her voice didn't rise. It resonated, echoing her brother's plea, the promise that had carried her through loss and into this fray. The driver shifted, glancing at his partner, the river lapping indifferently at their feet. In that pause, Jax moved like shadow, snatching the radio from the dash through the open door, static crackling with intercepted chatter. Coordinates, names tied to the foster shadows, a web of indifference spun into profit. Riley held up a hand, the gesture commanding silence from the air itself. Walk away. Tell your bosses the vixens are watching. One more move on her, and we ride to every door. Expose it all. The men hesitated, the moral weight pressing like the mist lifting around them, revealing the dawn's unforgiving clarity. No fists flew, no shots rang out. Instead, a slow retreat, the van's engine coughing back to life, tires spinning mud as it peeled away, taillights fading into the haze. The group stood in the aftermath, breaths mingling with the river's breath, a victory quiet but profound, etched in the lines of their faces. Elena turned to Lila, pulling her close, the girl's shoulders relaxing for the first time since the lobby's cold chairs. It's not over, Elena murmured, the words a vow renewed. But we've got the light now. Riley clapped her on the back, the contact solid as family forged. The engines idled, ready for the return, but Elena felt the shift, a reckoning deferred, not denied. The USB in her pocket hummed with potential, promises clashing toward a greater storm, where loyalty's fire would illuminate the darkest corners. As they mounted up, the sun broke fully, gilding the water in gold, a silent testament to stands taken in the quiet hours. The sun climbed higher, its rays piercing the mist like fingers of judgment, turning the river into a ribbon of molten gold that snaked through the awakening city. Elena's bike idled beneath her, the engine's vibration a steady hum against her thighs as the vixens gathered in a loose circle on the muddy bank. The van's taillights had vanished around a bend, swallowed by the industrial sprawl, but the air still thrummed with the echo of confrontation, not with blows, but with words that cut deeper than any blade. Lila dismounted slowly, her sneakers sinking into the soft earth, and leaned against Elena's side, the girl's breath coming in shallow waves that spoke of relief, laced with lingering fear. The weight of the USB drive in Elena's pocket felt heavier now, a talisman of truths unearthed, promising to unravel the shadows that had chased them through the night. Riley wiped a streak of mud from her cheek, her silver hair disheveled, but her posture unbowed, as if the dawn itself bowed to her resolve. That was clean, she said, voice low and gravelly, carrying over the lap of water against weathered pilings. No blood, but they've got the message. Our code holds. Protect the lost, expose the rot. Jax pocketed the confiscated radio, its antenna bent like a humbled spine, static hissing faintly with fragments of intercepted calls, names whispered in urgency, connections to the foster underbelly where girls like Lila vanished into silence. Mia reviewed the footage on her phone, the screen's glow reflecting in her sharp eyes, capturing the men's retreat in crisp detail, their hesitation, the crack in their facade. It was evidence, poetic in its quiet power, a thread to pull the entire web apart. Elena slid off the bike, her boots squelching in the damp soil, and pulled Lila into a loose embrace, the scent of river mud and leather mingling with the faint chamomile still clinging to the girl's hoodie. "You were brave back there," she murmured, her words a balm against the chill wind stirring the willows. Lila looked up, eyes wide but no longer haunted, a spark of something new flickering there, trust, perhaps, or the first bloom of belonging. "We all were," she replied softly, her voice gaining strength like the rising light. Elena's mind drifted to her brother's photo in the duffel, tucked away on Jax's bike now. His faded smile, a reminder of the vow that had started as a whisper in a dying room and grown into this roar of solidarity. Losing her job at St. Hope had felt like exile, but it had cracked open a door to this chosen family, where loyalty wasn't inherited but earned in the fire of shared stands. The group remounted, engines coughing to life in a staggered symphony, the chrome accents catching the sun in blinding flashes. They rode back through the awakening streets, the city unfolding like a reluctant witness. Delivery vans rumbling past, early commuters glancing from crosswalks with fleeting curiosity. No sirens wailed in pursuit. The shadows had slunk away for now, but Elena knew the fight lingered, a moral undercurrent waiting to surge. At the safe house by the river's curve, they pulled into the gravel drive, the cabin's door swinging open to reveal Thomas waiting, his face etched with the lines of a man who'd chosen sides in the quiet hours. He'd driven ahead, his unmarked sedan blending with the morning traffic, and now he spread fresh printouts on the scarred table, redacted files from the hospital's archives, timestamps matching the van's movements, links to a network of indifferent hands profiting from the overlooked. Social services buried her case weeks ago, Thomas explained, his finger tracing connections on the paper, the ink smudged like half-forgotten sins. Tied to a placement agency, with board ties to the hospital admins. They shuffle kids into care that isn't. Vestiges of rough handling. Reports vanished overnight. Lila sat at the table's edge, blanket draped over her shoulders, absorbing the words without flinching, her hands steady as she accepted a mug of steaming coffee from Mia. The room filled with the women's low murmurs, plans weaving like smoke from the hearth's dying embers. Anonymous tips to journalists, copies of the footage leaked through secure channels, calls to allies in the system who'd long chafed under corruption's weight. Elena contributed quietly, her nurse's knowledge filling gaps, protocols twisted, oversight ignored, her voice a steady anchor amid the rising tide of resolve. By midday, the pieces aligned, a dossier compiled with the precision of a surgeon's sutures. Riley sealed the envelope with a decisive slap, her eyes meeting Elena's across the table. "This goes out today, no turning back." Elena nodded, the motion carrying the full measure of her redemption. From a suspended nurse to the heart of this storm, her promise fulfilled not in isolation, but in unity. Lila reached for her hand, fingers interlacing, a silent bond forged in the lobby's cold light and tempered here by firelight. The vixens dispersed with purpose, Jax to drop the package at a neutral post, Mia to monitor responses, leaving Elena and Lila to linger by the window, watching the river flow onward, indifferent yet cleansed by the sun. As afternoon waned, word filtered back, ripples spreading. A local news van parked outside the hospital, reporters probing the administration with questions that pierced the facade. The charge nurse's office, once a throne of protocols, buzzed with frantic calls, the buried files surfacing like ghosts demanding reckoning. Elena's phone lit with messages from old colleagues, support, apologies veiled as regrets, validating the stand she'd taken. No charges loomed, the evidence painted her as whistleblower, not renegade. Lila, too, found tentative safety. A counselor from a clean agency, vetted by Thomas, waiting with offers of real shelter, a path forward untainted by shadows. Twilight painted the cabin in hues of amber and indigo, the group reconvening around a simple meal of stew simmering on the stove. The aroma rich with herbs and shared warmth, laughter threaded the air for the first time, Jax's gravelly tales of past rides. Riley's quiet nods of approval, turning the space into a hearth of chosen kin. Elena sat beside Lila, the girl's head resting on her shoulder, exhaustion giving way to peace. "This is what family feels like," Lila whispered, the words a quiet victory. Elena smiled, her brother's vow complete, echoing in the bonds around her. Promises that outlasted storms, justice won through integrity, not force. Outside, engines idled once more, but this ride was homeward, toward apartments and lives reclaimed. The vixens hugged Lila fiercely, vests creaking like oaths renewed, before peeling away into the dusk. Elena's truck waited, engine purring softly, the road ahead clear under the emerging stars. As they drove, the city lights twinkled like affirmations, the weight of the night lifting into legacy. One nurse's quiet stand had summoned a sisterhood, redeeming losses in the glow of loyalty's enduring fire. If this tale of unbreakable promises and chosen hearts touched you, drop a subscribe and join us for more stories of quiet courage. Your support keeps the ride going. Thank you from the depths of these northern roads.